Hello everybody, this is Herb from Jackson Graphics, or Big Twin Life, and I just wanted to drop in today to make a video about DPI. And the reason I'm doing that is because I was watching a conversation on Facebook and there seemed like there was a lot of confusion about what that actually means. So what I've done is I prepared a little graphic here that kind of, I hope, will help explain what's going on with DPI and how to understand it. So DPI stands for dots per inch. And technically, when we're talking about graphics, we're really talking about pixels per inch because that's really the terminology. But anyway, what I've got here is shown on the screen right now is a square that has 72 dots going across and 72 dots going down in a grid. So this represents a 72 DPI image. And I say it's 72 DPI because this big block of squares is actually 1 inch by 1 inch. So in a 1 inch square, I have 72 pixels across and 72 pixels up and down. That makes my 72 DPI image. And so there's another, so you got two terms, the DPI and the inch dimension. Okay, so you have the DPI and the inch dimension. You also have another term, pixel dimension. So 72 DPI is the resolution of the image. 1 inch is the dimension of the image in inches. And because this is a 72 DPI image that is also 1 inch in dimension, 1 inch times 72 means it's also a 72 pixel wide by 72 pixel tall image. So then my resolution is 72 DPI. My unit or my inch dimension is 1 by 1 inch. And my pixel dimension is 72 pixels by 72 pixels. I hope that makes sense. So your pixel dimension is your DPI times your inch dimension. Okay, that's how you get that. So this will mean something here in a minute. We'll talk about that after I do a little bit more explanation of the resolution issue. So if I were to zoom in on these pixels, I'm using circles, dots, because I want to be able to see the space between it to help us understand the granularity of the different resolutions. So again, there's 72 of these across that make an inch, 72 down that make an inch. Now I'm going to turn on the 150 DPI. All right. So I don't know if you noticed that, but now for every 1 pixel of 72 DPI, I've got about 4 pixels of 300 or 150 DPI. So 150 DPI is about twice as wide and twice as tall as 72. It's a little more actually, but it's roughly close. So again, let me turn 150 off for a second. See that square? All right, you see that square right here? Okay, I can't. Yeah, okay, there's an individual square. Give me a second. I've got to get. Okay, so now when I turn on 150, there's 4 of these pixels for every 1 pixel of 72. So even though dimensionally it's twice the dimension as or twice the pixel density wide and vertically as 72, there's actually 4 times the information dropped into the same pixel. So there's 4 dots versus 1, so it's 4 times the information. So the granularity increases. Now we've got even more grains in this image than we had before. So when you look at these in terms of image quality, let's go back to turn 150 off, and let's go back to our zoom rate that we were at before. So if you look at that image, you can definitely see the white dots in there, right? The white holes. Okay, so if this was the bottom of a bowl, you could see how much water would be flowing out of it. Now watch the difference at 150. Those holes get way smaller. See that? Way smaller. So your loss of information is really less, way less than what was happening at 72. So you have 4 times as much information with 150. Now here, let's turn back 72 and let's turn on 300. Now this is packing a ton more information. So this is 4 times more than the 150. So it's 16 times more than your 72. So let's do a little, let me turn this off. Let me get zoomed way back in here. Okay, now let me turn one. So there's now about 16 dots for every 1 dot of 72 when I'm looking at a 300 DPI image. So there's 16 times more information being thrown into that same dot size as a 72 DPI. So basically you've got a 1-inch pie, or 1-inch box that's divided by 72 spaces vertically and horizontally at 72 DPI. I mean, you're taking that same size and now you're dividing up into 300 parts vertically and horizontally. So you can see how you have just increased the granularity so much. You've got so much more data in that space than you had, so much more data with 300 DPI in that space than you had at 72. And if we zoom back out to our visible resolution zoom, this is where we started. When we turn on 300 DPI, watch those dots. They're kind of gone to the naked eye, even at this zoom level. That's how much information is being added to the image when you go to 300 DPI. Now, the next thing I want to show you is what happens when you throw in a 72 DPI image. Okay, so one of the comments that someone made earlier today was that they had an image and they put it in and they blew it up to the size that they were going to print it, and the printer said that it can't use that image because it didn't have enough quality. And then they made the image smaller and the message went away. Well, that's because what they've done is that they tried to make a 72 DPI image act like a 300 DPI image by making it physically larger. So they took the dimensions and made it bigger. So let's say they needed a 10 by 10 image. They took that 72 DPI image and it was only, say it was 1 inch. They took that 1-inch image at 70 DPI and they increased it by 10 dimensionally. But what that means is they take that 72 DPI and they've divided it by 10 because they increased the size by 10. So they've taken that dot and made it take up even more room at an eighth or at their inch scale. So now instead of 72 dots filling up an inch, they've got instead of 72 dots filling up the inch, they've got 7.2 dots filling up the inch. So their quality of data has decreased incredibly by a factor of 0.1. So that is why it gave them the error. Now I'm going to kind of try to demonstrate that, but I'm going to turn on this 72 DPI. I'm going to put it in front of the 300. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 72 DPI, right? And because it's, I want to convert it to what it would be like if I try to put it into a 300 DPI document. So now I'm going to be 72 pixels wide in this image. Let's see if it does it. Okay, did it that way. Let's do it the other way too. 72 pixels. Okay, because I had 300 DPI, but I brought in a 72 DPI image, which means I have to scale this image down to match the same dot pitch. So now when I zoom in, those dots are the same size as my 300 DPI images. That's what happens when you bring a low resolution image in. You bring a 72 DPI image into a 300 DPI um, uh, document, it's going to take that image and shrink it down so that those pixels match size. And that's why what you thought was supposed to be 10 inches or whatever now looks like that compared to what it's supposed to be. So that's what happens when you mix resolutions. And that's why when you try to bring an image into a high resolution workspace, like in your DTF printer software, it's going to take that image and slam it down because it's converting that dot pitch to the dot pitch of the program. And that's why it shrinks it when you bring it in. And that's why when you make it larger, it's actually decreasing pixel density, decreasing granularity, meaning you're losing data. So the program says, I can't print a quality image with that. Your angled line is going to look like a staircase if I print this. It's going to look terrible. And so it gives you that error. And then when you shrink it down, you get it closer to you get it closer to the actual dot pitch of your environment. And now it says, okay, now I can print that, but it only prints it an inch wide. So that's the issue. You have DPI, which is resolution. You have you have dimension, which is your inches by inches. And then you have your pixel dimension, which is your inches times your resolution. So if your resolution is 300 and it's a 10-inch image, then your pixels is 300 times 10 or 3000. So if you have a 72 DPI graphic and it's 10 inches, then you're only 720 pixels versus 3000. You see where the difference is. So that's why you have to be really careful when you're bringing in images. You have to be really careful for understanding what the DPI of your images versus the DPI of your workspace. And when you're scaling things up and down, you're really screwing with your dot pitch, which can mess up the quality of the image. Now, I will say this. What happens when you have a great image, but it's not able to print at the resolution you want? Well, fortunately, there's some great tools out there. If you go to Canva or you go to Kittl, even Affinity, you can upscale things now, and AI will take that image and scale it up to a higher resolution and keep the intent of the image there. And so it smooths out all those lines. It puts back all the detail that wasn't there originally. It adds it to it and gives you a very good quality image. Again, this is Herb Halstead from Jackson Graphics and Big Twin Life. I hope this helped you out. Please hit like and subscribe if it did. Thanks.